And we're live.
We
So
are that.
we
Hey, Lenny.
are. Thank goodness. So happy Friday, everybody.
Mhm.
So you can tell we kind of kept it secret that Karen is on a beach in you know Southeast Asia somewhere.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, she had an incredible IEX pack in Bangkok, and so
Yes.
it's a well-deserved little respite, but that meant she couldn't be on the exchange. So
So my secret co-host this week, Susan Griffith. And for anybody who doesn't know Susan, I'm going to give you a little bit of context here. Susan was my sales rep at GMI back in 2006, 2007, something along that, working with
on to the
the
math
legendary
people.
Allison Morgan,
Yes,
and
indeed.
yes, that whole team.
Indeed.
So Susan and I have known each other a long time. She's also a board member at Green Book, and we talk all the time, and she has a very specific perspective on things, and I thought it would be wonderful to have her as a co-host. So Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much, Lenny.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. So why don't you give the audience a little more background for those who don't know you, just to that'll set the stage for our conversation.
Well, yes, I've been in the research industry tangentially, adjacently, peripherally for much of my career. GMI sales, individual contributor, selling panel. Then I ran marketing for a company called Brain Juicer, now System One Group, for 9 years. And in 2017, started a marketing strategy consultancy to help agencies basically articulate their narrative in order to be able to increase sales. So yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
It's a good story and it works. So, and that's the segue. So we're going to do what we usually do. We're going to cover some stories, but we're going to put a little different lens on it rather than just kind of throwing everything against the wall, as Karen and I always do. Uh, because of because of your experience, I'm like, like I'm talking like you're not here, you are here.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's put these stories in the context of you know brand building and marketing and how all
You know,
that plays in.
fame, grabbing attention, building awareness, but to serve the goal of increasing sales, because that's really that's the holy grail.
Yep.
That's the gold ring. So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, we had some interesting things happen this week, and in the spirit of fame, right? Les Binet, who arguably is the godfather of fame and advertising effectiveness, stepped down after 40 years at Adam and Eve DDB. It's important to sort of know the context that he and his partner in crime, Peter Field, wrote a seminal piece called The Long and the Short of It, Balancing Short and Long-Term Marketing Strategies. And that really became the idea behind a lot of measuring advertising effectiveness, that you've got to build fame for a brand, right? And fame is long-term. Fame gets you sales long-term. Now, long-term has become kind of an interesting terminology now, because long-term used to be 5 years, long-term these days could be an hour and a half, given the velocity of things that have been changing, which we've talked a lot about. But anyway, I found it interesting that Binet actually was credentialed at St. Catherine's College at Oxford in artificial intelligence back in 1985. So he knew something about data. But the idea of fame and the idea of being able to build brand awareness, it's one thing if you're a market leader like Ipsos, but if you are a new emerging brand, how do you build fame? How do you grab attention? How do you build awareness? And how do you convert that awareness to sales? And we're pretty familiar with a company that's done that rather well, who had a big announcement this week.
It did with so shout out to Ryan Barry, the president at Zappi, who announced that he was leaving to try his hand at something new. And yes, wonderful case study. And for those who don't know, we've talked about this publicly, right? This is Zappi is really interesting from a Green Book standpoint because it was literally like a napkin that Steve had written the concept, entered the competition, the very first IAX, won. Oh, and then
And that was 15 years ago.
It's 15 years ago, 16
15
now.
years ago.
Yeah. So to your point, they've been a really instructive example of this process of going from a innovative, disruptive startup, going through that process of building fame. And Ryan has been a very instrumental part of that. He's been front and center from a content perspective. They just published a book. They've done a lot of the right things that has translated into growth, top line revenue growth for the business, to where they are no longer just a startup. They are, Zappi is a major player within the industry.
Exactly. And what's fascinating to me is the fact that both Steve and Ryan came out of the more traditional approaches to market research.
Yep.
So when they built Zappi, called Zappi Store in the beginning, they understood what they were disintermediating. They understood what they were disrupting, and they built something that was fit for purpose. And the whole thing speaks for itself. So Ryan, we'll wait to hear where Ryan's going next and what happens for Zappi in the meantime. But some other companies captured our attention, which is part and parcel of, building awareness this week. And what was fascinating to me was that these companies announced either relationships with a different company or spinning out a different company. And the two that came to my attention were L&E, and they announced that they're powering a company called, I think it's Conducts. Okay, I was pronouncing it Conducts. And it is, again, a fit for purpose, built for market research, UX measurement testing company. But I found it fascinating that it's L&E powering this entity. And the other one was JTE, arguably one of the bigger healthcare research oriented companies. And Dan Wasserman is a quite articulate voice around the use of AI in research. They announced a new company called SparkIntelligence.ai, and it's an AI moderation and digital twin company. And Dan is going to have a role both at KJT and at Spark. And I found that fascinating. Thoughts, Lenny?
Yeah, well, I have specific insights. Elney is a client of Gen 2, so I've been involved in that process of launching Conducts. So I won't get into the weeds on that. It's an example of a company that has been, you'd think of fairly traditional, their field services, recruiting.
But well known. They have
well known
brand awareness.
Yes, but building off of their core assets, and in this case, it was really their panel, their expertise in recruiting, and the panel that they have built, and repurposing that in a new way, and using that to help accelerate this concept of fame, and they're working with some external contractors to help drive their marketing strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that this is very instructive in our industry now, that growth is a combination of one of kind of rethinking how we combine our core assets, combined with smart and effective marketing. And I would say KGT is an example of that as well, right? They're
Yeah.
utilizing AI and these tools to take some things that they already had, but to meet a new opportunity.
Right. Recognizing that moderation and digital twinning
Mhm.
isn't just relevant to the healthcare industry. And
Yes.
so changing it, having this adjacent brand gives them the ability to be able to reach people outside of healthcare. But, there's lots of ways that we see companies gaining attention and building awareness. We see a lot of companies using the tools at their disposal, announcing product launches, new leadership, new hires. And then, of course, shameless plug, leveraging all the ways they can reach the audiences that they want to target through the Green Book tools. And,
Right.
we'll leave it at that. And, hopefully people understand what I mean by that. But so
Give us your money. That's
leverage our
Yes.
resources,
Yes.
leverage
Yes.
what we have. And oftentimes we see that advertisers, sponsors, guests on the podcast, whomever, aren't necessarily taking full advantage of what's available. But
Yes.
something that grabbed my attention this week, a company who did leverage one of the assets that we've already talked about, which is the Insights Innovation Competition. This is a company called Orchard Insights. They announced this week expansion of their board, right? I mean, so that signals, wow, they've attracted some really heavy hitters who think that their tools are, something to be considered. And again, Orchard will be back at IAX North America.
Carly?
In April. Yeah. And if folks, if you haven't checked it out yet, we're moving to DC this year from Austin. Already the sessions seem incredibly insightful and amazing, and will capture a lot of attention for sure. But getting back to the competition, which will also be announced, the 5 finalists will present, the winner will be announced. I mean, going back to Zappi, but thinking about last year, we had Bounce Insights, we had Wokesy, we had a couple of years ago, we had Highlight. These are all companies who entered the competition and have built on that awareness and have really built their companies. So shameless plug, but we also heard from a friend of market research in general, but certainly a friend of Green Book. We have somebody who's a behavioral expert who announced a new product literally yesterday. Drum roll.
Yep. Will Leach.
Yes,
who has co-hosted on the exchange, and as you said, long time friend, right? Will's a gift to IAX, right? We always have him on stage because he's just so damn bright.
Well, and also he took a concept like behavioral economics or behavioral science and made it actionable for brands, right? Marketing to Mind States, one of his book, his first book.
Yep.
Amazing. And he has launched something called MindPath. It's a behavioral AI research assistant. And the research assistant is dubbed Mindy. Mindy has an avatar. I was a little miffed that Mindy doesn't look more like me, but that's okay. But, and will actually be showcasing MindPath at IAX North America. But imagine a research assistant that's not just AI, but it's AI trained on behavioral models. So really fascinating. Kudos to Will. Really thrilled for him, and people should check it out.
So, let's pause for a second though, because there's something that's occurring to me as we're having this, and this happens, right? As we're talking through things.
Sure.
we started the exchange because we thought there was a need to curate information because there's so much happening right now, especially
And contextualize things.
and
You know,
contextualize it, right?
there's a lot of news announcements out there, but what I find about the exchange that's fascinating is that I'll see an announcement and you and Karen, you look across the internet, you know, manually, hand stitched you, but you also use discovery tools, AI discovery tools.
Mhm.
But what the exchange does is puts things in context. Why does this matter?
It does, and so I'll build off that in this specific context around building fame and in mind share. So in a what we are companies like Greenbook exist because we help bring everything together, right? Events, great example of that, right? IEX is, and all the other events in the industry are successful because you're bringing, content effectively and the right people involved in producing that content together in one place so it's easily accessible. We could argue that any publication, any website, that's effectively what they do. Bring the right information together so people can access it readily. From a buyer standpoint, though, and so go back in the competition, is we were both reviewing the new entrants this year. There were 42 new entrants this year.
45.
45 entrants. We've never had that many before. So it's usually around 20 or 20 plus, something of that nature. So the pace of change and the pace of new entrants coming into the market is only increasing. Now, that's good news for the industry as a whole, because that means obviously people recognize the need for data and for understanding data to answer business question it's only increasing in importance as well. So that's great, right? The industry in general, that the theory that the foundation market research is good. How that's happening and who are the constituents, that's all up for grabs, right? That is changing very rapidly, and we see that. We have a unique view into those things. So now here's the question for you. In an increasingly crowded, fragmented marketplace, not just from a business standpoint, but even for attention.
Oh,
overall.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
attention is the scarcest commodity we have.
Right. And it's only getting, right, we're all ADHD now, right? So
Yeah.
So from your perspective, your sage wisdom, right? What do you think that means for our businesses, the businesses in our industry, and how they need to adapt, and that just in general?
Well, putting the lens of attention and awareness and fame on that question. And I've had personal experience with this, certainly back in the day when I was at Brain Juicer. Yes, you build awareness, you get attention, and you can get it in a variety of different ways, some of them more gimmicky than others. Then you get the pilot or the first project. The key is to get the repeat business and ultimately to become the preferred supplier. And in order to do that, you really have to have a killer app. You can't just have a glitzy website. You can't just spend a lot of money.
Yeah, you got to have steak with that sizzle.
Steak, potatoes, unless you're on a high protein diet. I mean, you got to have everything that actually, first of all, is better than your competition and actually delivers the goods.
Yep.
And, we have an example. I don't know if we talked about this. You shared something with me about what it was at Humane. What was the brand that?
Yes, the AI pin that was going to, the wearable that was going to replace the phone, started by folks from OpenAI. Yes.
Right. And this week, you sent me an alert that basically they're shuttered and they sold their assets to HP because at the end of the day, it was wow, but what? You know, they didn't have the killer app.
Yep.
Now there's probably a whole lot more to that story that we that we could tell, but the whole idea is gaining awareness is base camp. Everest is 11,000 feet above base camp, and it's pretty treacherous to get there.
Yeah.
But base camp doesn't get you to the summit. You've got to basically have the right tools because you're going to get one chance. And these days, it's increasingly hard to unseat incumbents at brands. I mean, Lenny, you've got experience with this. Can we name the brand that has to scrutinize their vendor lists very carefully that you're
Yeah. I mean,
intimate with?
yeah, I'm the Gentoo, business. The one that I can always publicly talk about is P&G, right?
Right.
So yes, they're a great example that
How tough
everybody
is
wants
it?
to work with P&G,
Absolutely.
but it is internally for a company of their size. I think to your point, they can't work with everybody. It's to begin with, their lens is always what allows us to meet the business need in the most effective way at the best price and increasingly fastest. That's the lens. Cheaper, faster, better. Always the lens. And then there's this layer of complexity of even getting through the process to become a vendor.
Right.
So
if you get there, your tool better be more than just a fun story or a claim.
They have dedicated teams as well as support from people like me, and we do. That's public. I have been for many years to help evaluate those tools on an ongoing basis. They don't having a slick sales pitch doesn't do the deal. So
exactly, and I think that the challenge is really that a lot of the decision makers at the buyer level, at the buyers, they may know traditional research. They may be expert in the approaches from even as recent as 5 years ago that were the gold standard, but they're not necessarily experts in these new technologies. And they're looking for people who really understand whether or not these tools are fit for purpose. I mean, there are a number of companies that are applying AI to research challenges, but if they are not companies that really understand going back to the Zappy story,
right?
Steve had been in research since Moses was in Boy Scouts. He knew how the industry had to get better, and he had the courage to take that cocktail napkin idea and turn it into a business. But he wasn't just a geek who knew how to write code.
You got to speak client,
right? And we know the ones that actually understand what better, cheaper, faster actually means.
In terms
of, better. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the killer app, is the better.
And it's only people who understand what the standard was before who understand how to make things better as opposed to just cheaper and faster.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I want to play off that for a second. That was yesterday. Well, we were going back and forth on in preparing for this on all right, am I going to go off on my AI soapbox? And we decided, no, I wasn't. So I turned into a LinkedIn post. So if anybody's
Yes.
interested in my opinion on this a little more in depth, look at the LinkedIn post. But it's relevant to this conversation because the that technology, the underlying technology that powers the innovative solutions that are in this cheaper, faster, better scenario is changing just as rapidly. It's not like, mobile. I mean, mobile's some things have changed, but effectively it really hasn't, right? People have a device and you have a way to engage with them, and that hasn't changed in 15 years. Not fundamentally, right? You got more bells and whistles, but it's basically the same online. It's basically the same. It's just slicker and faster and those things. But the AI, what we've been paying attention to, and this was I won't go into the details, the pace of that innovation of that technology is fundamentally different. The step changes between ChatGPT when it was first launched 3 years ago and the latest iterations of GPT-3 or Grok or any of these other solutions that are emerging.
My friend Claude,
right? Claude, the Perplexity.
yeah,
I mean, any of those, they're all. It's a big change. It's a big change in capability.
When we had our prep call for today, you made the penny drop for me because I hadn't really thought about the fact that there were some entrants into, AI for market research who built their tools on the first generation of these.
Yes, and rightfully so. They were innovators. They saw the potential and they jumped
right.
in.
But does that make their initial tools obsolete when these new, when the step changes happen? So to your point, the good ones who understand market research, understand what the unmet need was, understand what they were trying to make better, who are also paying attention, as your blog post, it's a cautionary tale to all of us, Lenny. We've got to be paying attention. That word again. It's those companies that stack that all together and keep current with the evolutions in technology, who are ultimately going to win in what you were referring to as an arms race, which I suppose that's a way to do it. But again, if you can look yourself in the mirror as a supplier and say, "Yep, we have a killer app. Yep, we're going to do our level best to gain attention and get to that, trial period, and then, get repeat business because we actually did do something that's better." Again, there's many ways to do that, Green Book being one, but we see these press announcements, and you and Karen spend a lot of times, as I said, scouring the internet, but getting the press releases directly is just another way to ensure that they're in front of you. And we're close, but I think there's an email where people can send alerts that will get to you and Karen for the exchange. I think you're going to put that in the chat.
Carly. Yep.
Carly.
At the exchange.org. And actually on that note, we should, and I'm sorry, I just remember this. There was one press release. Somebody did that. They sent it to us and is an example of even the function of a press release helping to drive that idea of fame. And it was from our friends at Behavix.
Yes.
With their fundraise. That helps. That entire process, especially when you're an early stage company, you need every single thing you can find that is actually valid, right? That to help build that momentum of brand awareness. Yeah, and I think there's a link to the Behavix story that Carly can put in the chat. Yep. They're doing a behavioral panel. Which, by the way, just not total aside, but the we've been talking about this for years now, that behavioral data in the era of AI was going to become more important than just purely attitudinal data. And this is another example of that I am aware of money flowing from investors, et cetera, in that category. That era has arrived. We need to start thinking more about the uses of behavioral data rather than attitudinal data within the research process. Companies like Behavix are examples of that.
So, I mean, to tie this all up, we all know, we recognize that brand awareness for agencies is key, but I'd like to put that in context for why.
Mm-hmm.
And our friends at the Ehrenberg Bass Institute conducted a survey. All of you out there who are listening probably have heard this stat. Their data revealed that 95% of buyers are not in the market for your services at any given moment. So in that brief moment where what you can deliver is the killer app, the mission critical solution, you've got to have built some top of mind awareness, or else you're going to lose that critical moment when they actually are in the market for your services. So
and you got the coolest in the world, but if nobody knows it, then
exactly
it doesn't matter. You ever seen the movie Tucker, about the Tucker car? It was just Tucker. It was a type of car in the 50s. It was very advanced, right? It was very it was state of the art. It's a great movie. But the idea of you have this most advanced, it was a killer app. It was a great thing. But he didn't market. The competitive set was too entrenched. He was trying to unseat Ford and Chevy and the major players at that point. It didn't matter how good that car was. He didn't market effectively, so therefore he could not break through.
Right.
And it became a footnote in history. Yes, absolutely, Will. Yes, that once you go down that path, you're stuck, and you got to stay abreast. And that was the point of
absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, because it's not just version 1.0, right? It's a slight tweak. It does one thing better. At this world, I mean, they are. Whoa! What the hell? That is radically different in capability. They're massive changes. Yeah.
So, Lenny,
yep, we're
at time. This has been so much fun.
Well, you're going to get called in to service again at some point. Either Karen or I won't be available, and you will. Tim Lynch, Carrie, you guys are in.
This is exactly what I wanted. I am a groupie, and I have advanced my status to roadie. I love it.
Oh, you need to carry my guitar. That's funny.
All right.
Yeah.
Be well.
Anything else? We want to throw anything else for a wrap?
Well, I mean, just shameless plug for Green Book again. I mean, there's a lot to take advantage of at Green Book that if you're not delving deep, if you're only just saying, how much is it going to cost for me to have a kiosk at North America? I think there are only a couple left. You're missing an opportunity. If you engage with the sales team at Green Book, articulate for them what your bigger goals are, and let them think about different ways that Green Book can help, in all of your portfolio of marketing solutions to build that brand awareness. It's one thing if you're, Ipsos or GFK. It's another thing if you're an emerging company and you're innovating and you want to grab attention.
Yeah. And on that note, we will always support innovative startups with like this. That's one reason we do this, of making people aware. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. So,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Lenny. And we'll see you around.
Yep, absolutely. Take care, guys. See you next Friday. Bye-bye.